We are now proceeding with our next session, which is clusters impact on economic development, and we will be hearing challenges and opportunities in the region. I would like to present the moderator, Mantas Viļas, the Director of Lithuanian Innovation Center, East Europe, Enterprise European Network Lithuania. Mantas, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, coffee break is over. I hope that you had a great chance to meet each other, to discuss, and it's not only the content that we share with you, but also the networks and connections. I hope that you find yourself well acquainted with the participants. Yes, my name is Mantas Viļas. I will be your host for this session, for the most remarkable and most practical, I hope, session, where we will discuss not only the cluster phenomena, changes and so on, but also the attitude and impact to the economical development. I guess no one of you objects that clusters contribute to the economical development. But as always, the devil is in the details, on practicalities of it, on how they do it. I mean, even though this phenomena is super interesting and super desired, especially now when we have the supply chains disruptions, other things happening, and so on. So everyone is looking into the clusters as a possible partner, as a possible stakeholder, bringing the economy back, bringing the competitiveness back, and so on. So even though the impact to the economical development is really desired, it's still hard to foresee and plan precisely how to reach these targets, how to reach this economical development with the support of clusters. So today we have the session particularly for that. And I'm super happy that there are also some policymakers here, cluster members, cluster organizations are here. So definitely we will share we'll try to find the common views. Do we look into the same direction? Do we expect same things from the clusters, from the development of the clusters initiatives and so on? So technically the session is divided in two parts. At first we'll have two presentations delivered. Presentations, it depends on the time frame, but I think we will be able to pick up one question from the audience if there are any. So please don't hesitate. We are in a small community here. Of course, number of spectators over the internet are, also with us. So yeah, think about the questions. So we have two speakers now. After the speakers, we will have the panel here. Panel which is based on two parts or two types of participants. Policymakers that basically give the best tools, best atmosphere, best policies to support the clusters. But also we have in the panel, we'll have the cluster representatives that actually do this daily and work with the companies, team up for the common goal and do contribute to the economical development. So we will share the common views and we will discuss the challenges and most importantly, the opportunities that we have in front of us, especially in these hard times, disruptions and world crises that we have now. Okay, so probably from the technical point of view, that's it. To kick off this magical session, I would like to invite Director of Network and Governance Directorate, DG GROW, European Commission, Mr. Jakub Worotyński. The stage is yours, please. Yeah, the microphone should be
excellent. Do I have for the slides?
Yes.
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mantas, for the dynamic introduction. I will try my best in giving you, an overview of let's say, policy from the European side. I mean, let me maybe first tell you that our intention is indeed to give you a context. This conference is about importance of the clusters for economic development, importance of the clusters in response to the major challenges that we see, but this happens in a very important context of actually the EU industrial policy. You've heard Commissioner speaking about the strategic economy. I think it was indeed with the Ursula von der Leyen Commission that we actually really took this whole issue to the new level. The Commission has adopted in 2020 industrial policy. Sorry, I'm just trying to see what we have here. Excellent. This is the slide that I was looking for. Industrial policy strategy, which you will not be surprised, has been updated as a result of the groundbreaking turbo events of pandemic. I'm saying about turbo events because I have been working in the past before joining DG Grow on digital affairs, on cybersecurity, and that basically, probably pandemics pushed us 10 or 20 years forward, if we compare to, let's say, the normal pace of things. The main pillars of the strategy is to strengthen single market resilience, and I think this is never more true than now when we are facing the war in the European continent. It is very much about analyzing about our strategic dependencies, accelerating the twin green and digital transition, and these are indeed the key pillars of this. Clusters are playing a very important role in delivery of this strategy. We believe that in the partnership between clusters, public authorities, the regions, this is one of the important ways for us to boost these objectives. Today we have more than 3,000 clusters that function in the EU. They in total employ 50 million people. They account for almost 1 in 4 jobs in Europe. So, and we have plenty of evidence that clusters work well. So I think this is, we see them as partner in actually in pursuing our industrial strategy. As part of this effort, the Commission has identified, 14 industrial ecosystems, which is a way of looking at the industry, beyond this kind of very traditional sectoral, purely industrial way. But it is also a recognition of the fact of the importance of the whole range of other partners that contribute to economic development, the research, academia, civil society, trade unions, SMEs, clusters, etc. In this effort, it's for us very important that we are not, let's say, we are avoiding the trap of, bureaucrats in Brussels inventing things which are ultimately about economic development. That's why, and this was actually mentioned by Maive, we have a very important partnership with the industry. Let's say at the pinnacle of that is the Industrial Forum. That is the group that brings together all key industrial associations in Europe, brings also actually representative of clusters, and this is a partner for us in co-creation of this industrial strategy. In the following slide, you see the main aspect of the work of this forum, which you will not be surprised again follows, of course, the main elements of the strategy. We will share with you the slides, and of course, I would encourage you to also look more in detail. I would like only basically to pick up some of the elements of this process. So, very important part of this work is the work on transition pathways for the key ecosystems. The idea is that basically together with the partners from the industry, we are reflecting of what are the key elements of what would be the successful twin transition. We are looking into issues such as skills, we are looking at the investment needs, we are looking into the regulatory barriers. I mean, all of this is a way for us actually to have a strategic vision, but at the same time also a very practical way of industry players, also in collaboration with public authorities, working together to make sure that 5, 10, 15 years down the road, we can actually say that Europe is remaining competitive and the European industry is beneficiary of a successful transition. Clusters, again, can play an important role in this work. We are, this process, of course, has a different pace depending on a different ecosystem. Tourism is actually the first ecosystem where a transition pathway has been elaborated. Again, I would say that being in this beautiful country, which I know pretty well, I mean, this is, of course, also something of quite some relevance to Lithuania. In terms of further work on the transition pathways, of course, we see extremely important areas, such as, in the area of energy intensive industries, where indeed the issue of strategic dependencies is of key importance, again, further exacerbated by the war and on the need, basically, to really, decouple from our dependency on Russia. Now, what more concretely we do for the clusters, which, as I said, remain for us a very important part in these efforts. So we have been, the Commission, of course, has been providing funds for the European cluster to helping them grow, professionalize, and collaborate. So you see here the main building blocks of the current, let's say, of the current funding, which is now, let's say, going to the end under COSME and Horizon 2020 program, with important components such as, international, where we have been basically funding cooperation of initiatives aimed at enhancing international cooperation of European clusters, which look for opportunities for trade investment into global markets. Under the pillar Cluster Excellence, we have been helping cluster partnerships to improve their functioning and develop better services. European Cluster Partnership for Smart Specializations is one specific example where we try basically to facilitate cluster cooperation in thematic areas. European Cluster Partnerships and Innovations help clusters to develop new cross-sectoral industrial value chains across the EU by supporting the innovation potential of SMEs. Now we are streamlining our support programs, and these programs will be phased out. They belong to the previous financial perspective, and now they are being replaced by one comprehensive initiative that is called Euroclusters, and this would be funded under a single market program. Specific objectives of this program are shown on this slide. 42 million. Perhaps it's not a lot if you think about investment in a specific business, but I think it's a lot in terms of oiling and facilitating, collaboration. So here you see the main elements of this new joint funding for clusters. Overall, this 42 million euros would be used to finance 30 projects, 30 partnerships, which would basically involve a high number of clusters across Europe. The applications have been just evaluated, and the list of successful applicants will be published shortly. We are very much looking forward, basically, to the implementation of these projects. As you know, this would take quite some time, and obviously, we would have another call in 24 for the new round of those partnerships. Another good example of the activity that we are funding is the European Cluster Panorama, which is the work which is helping us to better understand the cluster landscape in Europe and cluster potential. I think the presentation that you have seen in the previous session on Lithuania, I think, gives really a good sort of a taste of what we could do in terms of thorough understanding of the opportunities, of the challenges of clusters in specific sectors, in specific countries. So I very much encourage you to look into this, and this basically is a sort of an ongoing project. Another element which I would like to mention, a pillar, we have Antonio here, it's the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. This is basically an effort of bringing together clusters across Europe. We are very happy about this partnership. This is the wide range of services, so Commission is always very proud to, let's say, advertise what cluster collaboration is doing. We believe that this is of very practical use to the clusters, and of course this event today is a good example of that. Tomorrow we will have a sort of a very practical matchmaking events, which would ultimately, we really want to see this, all these support activities basically resulting in concrete business projects and business opportunities for the companies and clusters across Europe. Clusters meet regions. We are basically inaugurating, this project with meeting now in Vilnius. We are planning to have 15 of trans-regional workshops in coming 2 years. The idea is basically to bring together clusters as well as policymakers at regional and national level, to involve clusters more in basically governance of regional development, but also, let's be honest, to raise awareness of policymakers about the clusters, about what they can bring and about the opportunities. And last but not least, of course, it's always a great occasion for people to meet the partners from other countries and from other regions. Another activity, there are more activities. The slide that we will share with you would include more even, but I just wanted to highlight some of the elements of our work for clusters. So this international outreach of clusters, of course, is important. We are not just inward looking, but very much we want Europe to be a very active trading partner. And we are now planning a number of events with our key partners across the world, and you see the list of let's say events planned, and of course you would be always able to find the most updated information on the Cluster Collaboration Platform website. Another example of what is being done is the EU Cluster Policy Toolkit, which provides a database of various practices from EU 27 member states, which cover different areas of cluster activity and cluster collaboration. Then cluster talks. This is again another form of having very sort of quick, informal exchanges on issues of importance to clusters. I wouldn't hide also importance to the European Commission. I mean, if energy, agri-food, raw materials, logistics, all of these topics are becoming even more important in view of what is going on in Ukraine and the impact of the war on actually business activities. Well, also I think we wanted to inform you that we are now moving to the new phase of the Enterprise Europe network. This is the network that brings together organizations across the EU countries as well as our partners internationally that support SMEs. There are obviously a lot of synergies and possibilities of collaboration between this network and the clusters. Notably, we are going, in line again with the industrial strategy, with the twin transition. For example, with the new funding for the EEN, we would be funding sustainability advisors who would be advising companies, SMEs, on the green transition. The role of the Enterprise Europe network is, of course, multifold, and again, I believe that many of the participants of the clusters actually, if they don't use those services, they definitely would be encouraged to do so in the future. Well, now I would like maybe to move to the last part of my presentation, which is, of course, the war, which is very much on our minds. You heard from the Commissioner, from DDG, from my Deputy Director General Maive, about the work that we are doing. I mean, this slide basically gives you a snapshot of what is the economic impact, of the war. of what are the sectors that are being affected. And again, we, in that context, we are very much appreciating the collaboration with the clusters that we are actually pursuing over last 2 months. Some of you might have heard about survey on disruptions in supply and value chains. This is also to what Maive was referring in her remarks. We have received a lot of very valuable inputs from the companies, from the stakeholders. For those of you who haven't done so yet, we very much encourage you to actually share with us your insights about the impact of the war on disruption in supply and value chains, and you have the link to the survey here, so we very much encourage you to share this with us. Again, this is a very dynamic situation, and it's important for us that we really have the signals from the ground on what's really going on so that we can adjust our response. This slide gives a snapshot of actually what we received through the surveys, which are the sectors most affected. Again, it echoes also what we've heard from the minister, from Maive, and I think these are, this actually also tells us, where to focus all different activities, cluster talks, the various forms of support. Now, I think many of you are very familiar with this initiative, for which we are really grateful that we are able to pull it up, to pull it off together with the cluster collaboration platform, EU Cluster Support for Ukraine, matchings of the needs and offers of support. Again, we very much encourage you to go there and see how you could contribute. Finally, Supply Chain Resilience Platform is a platform that is a joint initiative of the Cluster Collaboration Platform, EEN, Commission, and we are supported by our executive agency, ASMEA. Very much also in the logic of matchmaking events, we really want, through that platform, to help companies to match their needs to basically make up for the major disruptions that we are facing, and we really hope that with the event tomorrow, this would be like a very important contribution to this platform. Finally, I'm actually personally, very glad that even though we are, of course, not in charge, how shall I say, of managing. I mean, when I'm saying we, I'm talking about DG Grow. So we are not overall in charge of supporting refugees from Ukraine. However, we are now basically, over the last 2 months, we have been very much reflecting and acting how to use different tools that we have exactly to support Ukrainians. So we are now basically working on how we can adjust different programs to support entrepreneurs who fled Ukraine and who are now in the EU to continue their business activities. We are also using different tools that are in the disposals of our DG to help Ukrainians to access EU labor market. Actually, 2 weeks ago, Commission has adopted, I would say, sort of ultra speed, a recommendation on recognition of professional qualifications of Ukrainians arriving in the EU. As you know, in a number of professions, we have national regulations, could be nurses, doctors, teachers, architects, and it's very important that we actually allow Ukrainians arriving in Europe to basically do the jobs for which they are qualified for, and actually there is an urgent need for that. If we take into example, the country I know the best, Poland, we have basically hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian children that needs to be put into the school, and obviously it makes sense that they are being, they continue the Ukrainian education. For that, Ukrainian teachers have to be fully able to work in Polish schools. So this is a very practical example of how we advise and work together with member states, how basically to overcome normally very lengthy and bureaucratic processes of recognition of professional qualifications to let refugees find their place quickly in the European market. And finally, and this was actually, I must say, a message I've heard personally from the Ukrainian Vice Minister of Economy, who was recently visiting Brussels, who was telling us, there was a very powerful message. I mean, we, after the initial shock of the war, the Ukrainian economy has restarted, basically in the parts of the country which are not occupied. And it's extremely important, that we actually, to the extent possible, we give assurance, we encourage European companies to do the business with the Ukrainian partners. Maive was, for example, giving a very good and noble example of Lithuania, which is basically providing insurance. So these are the things that we are very much committed to do. And again, I think this is an area where the clusters can also help. So I think that would be it from my side. Again, I'm extremely grateful for the, let's say, hospitality of our Lithuanian hosts. And we are very much looking forward to this event, which would be indeed a start of a very important process of working together to confront supply disruptions, to support, let's say, heroic fight of Ukraine, which is not only on a military front line, but it's also about basically keeping Ukrainian economy afloat, and this is essential for the survival of this country. And essential for the European Union. So again, thanks a lot, and I'm looking forward to a good discussion.
Thank you so much, Jakob. I was, shocked by the number of initiatives, presented here. I guess for the average participant, it's a bit hard to cope with all of these information points and action points suggested. Super interesting. I guess that there are a number of questions to be addressed, from really tangible firefighting actions that we need now, and I'm super glad that Commission, acts on. It's not only the strategic things that we discussed, but also practical things, actions, and so on, and also transition pathways, strategic things, and so on. I noted for myself 72 questions, but just for the sake of time saving, please get seated here in the center. We'll have one more presentation, you choose, yeah, sure. We have one more presentation, then we sit down in the panel, and I will pick up some questions from my list in the panel. And now we have, as some say, a godmother of many Lithuanian cluster initiatives, a number of clusters, number of events. You probably know her well, and not by accident. She is a director of the Lithuanian Cluster Network. Kristina Lešūnienė, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mantas. Wow, that was quite an introduction. Now, somehow don't feel very strong talking after calling myself a godmother for the clusters in Lithuania. But today I would like to start my presentation with a simple question. I was preparing for today, and usually my son comes in, he's 7 years old, and he asks, "Mother, what you're doing?" I say, I'm preparing for my next conference. He already is used to that I'm performing a lot. And he says, what kind of topic? I said, that's going to be on clusters. And he goes, what is a cluster? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have a real question for you. I think it would be very hard, even for all those experts here, sitting here, listening to us, to explain what is a cluster. So it was quite a question. And for my surprise, when I started to talk with the business community, with other people who are not that active in the cluster topic, they also asked me, okay, so what is a cluster? So I tried to find out the simple explanation. Because if you cannot explain to a 7-year-old kid, then you cannot explain at all. So originally, clusters, by the theoretical approach concept, clusters are business communities usually located on geographical level and working together. But now with the digital age and everyone being situated everywhere, what could be a cluster? So I found very simple answer. So for me, I don't know, we can argue later on. For me, a cluster is a group of organizations working together so they could be viewed as a single system. I really like it because when we talk about the cluster, we talk that it's a single system. This is very important, and I think this is the most important feature of the clusters, that we can be viewed as a single system working together. Okay, so let me start finally. Today, many experts who have talked before me already presented the scene of Lithuania, the economics in Lithuania, and probably the only thing what wasn't mentioned, that all those clusters in Lithuania are united by one single organization, that's Lithuania Cluster Network, which unites probably almost all clusters, around 50 clusters, and in total of 777 SMEs. Here you can see very briefly our most active cluster members in our network. And it's no wonder, when we listen to Mr. Jan Philip input paper from Lithuania, so he underlined those industries that you could see, that's agri-food, engineering, creative industries, photonics, lasers, wellness and health. So those are most important industries could be found in Lithuania. In Lithuania, with the cluster network, we are trying to recreate, as I always say, the concept of the clusters. So with the new challenges, digitalization, Green Deal, with the shortened value chains, and with them trying to be more resistant to the crisis, as was underlined before, and of course trying to be the part of the European value chains. What could be the role, or how we see it? I'm going to be in some parts repeating a little bit of the other opinions, but this is how we say the repetition is what makes perfect. So how we see it, the roles of the clusters, it's very important that it could really add the impact for the developing regions and impact actually the economy. How it could be done? Of course, strengthening, rebuilding local, regional, and European value chains, which have been broken during COVID. Now during war, we see the consequences. Of course, adding their impact to their smart specialization strategies, digitalization, circular economy, and in chasing the cooperation cross-border, cross-regional, and international. So strengthening and building resilience in the value chains, how we see it. That's close collaboration between first of all, between cross-border, on national, international levels, and working with the most important European value chains. Of course, encouraging clusters to innovate in their value chain processes, and encourage to create new business models. If we see, as it was mentioned before, we have in Lithuania official roadmap, which was approved by Innovation and Economy Ministry in 2021, so in autumn, so it's quite new. And by it was approved that it's going to be political policy interventions, which are going to be helping to for the Lithuanian clusters, businesses to integrate more into European value chains. So here you can see the most important strategic sectors, as it was mentioned before: engineering, chemicals, health technologies, energy, agri-food, textile, furniture, and of course ACT. Very briefly, how we see also, as it was in the input paper, that most clusters contribute a lot to the smart strategies. Today, we're going to be hearing some good, nice examples, use cases, so you could evaluate yourself, is it true? But how we see it in our community, in our network, we work a lot with the smart specialization strategies, and probably clusters play a big role introducing those strategies to their members. Again, circular economy. For the circular economy, we've talked also in our network a lot, and we have mostly all active clusters participating now in the official circular economy workshops and groups on the level of the policy making with the environmental ministry, and they actively participate in the creating the policy for the circular economy. So we are expecting, of course, to join those initiatives, political initiatives, and help achieve the circular economy goals, not only on the national level, but of course, looking at the EU level. Next thing, how we see, how could clusters integrate more and help achieve the goals. For example, for the circular economy, of course, because clusters, they integrate all the parts, needed parts which need to be connected in order to implement circular economy in all levels. So that means with the research, working with the research institutions, with the society, public administration, and businesses. Digitalization, it was mentioned by Richardas from Innovation and Economy Ministry that the digital innovation hubs are one of the most important upcoming new organizations. Now we're waiting for the European digital innovation hubs to be approved by European Commission. So again, it is a big opportunity for the clusters to collaborate together, because digital innovation hubs, as from the European digital strategy, if they are seen as the main organizations to implement digital goals and help the industries to transform for the digital way. So here, clusters could collaborate very closely, and in my opinion, it will be impossible, for example, for digital innovation hubs to operate by their own, not collaborating together with clusters, and I'm going to tell you why. Even European Commission has stated in many times that digital innovation hubs are actually clusters with the digital specifications or digital focus. So it's a kind of new type of the cluster. So in my opinion, collaboration, it's a mandatory thing. It's not a thing that you can be choosing. So we're going to be hearing a lot of examples, good examples, how clusters work, what kind of initiatives they do, on what basis they collaborate, and what kind of projects they are implementing. So it is very important that clusters would continue. And for the continuation, of course, we see many challenges. So if we talk about the future and what are opportunities, we see that it is very, very important to build, as it was mentioned before, a strategic autonomy for European ecosystems. And as we see the economy after COVID, and now the war is still going on, so we don't know how it's going to be in the future, but we already see that the economy will never be the same. And we need to adapt, we need to regroup, we need to create new, resilient, innovative ecosystems. So we need really to turn into strategic ways to become autonomic and to work towards autonomy and for the European industry ecosystems. And talking about that, also I should mention that for the future, those ecosystems, industries like agri-food that we've noticed with the chips now that it has been underlined, we have problems and etc. So these are becoming industries of the primary importance. So we need to remember that we need to make those more resilient. And of course, when talking about future creating, we have many talents. We can create many different technologies. And talking about the future, we need to understand, do we want really to export our know-how? And if we do, on what basis? So again, that it could be, first of all, for us, for making our single market more resilient. So that is it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Christina. Thank you. Yeah, as you correctly mentioned, sometimes the methodological and also, simple, overlook of what the clusters do mean and how do they evolve is required. And I hope that even though this is, I definitely see from the participants here present that there are the big fans of the clusterization here. So for them, I guess, everything is kind of clear, but nevertheless important. And I guess for the virtual meetings, I just got a message from my dear Irish colleague of Enterprise Europe Network, Mantas, I'm watching over you. So now I have to behave even better because I see that all Europe is watching us, discussing virtually and committing to this. So super interesting speech. Thank you so much for elaborating this. I'll have some questions and ideas to discuss with you in the panel. Now we move even into the more dynamic mode. We move into the panel mode now. Please, I invite Jakub to the floor. He will be accompanied by the two Christinas. One Christina is here. I'll invite another Christina from precisely cluster manager from Laser and Engineering Technologies cluster from Lithuania. Yes, please take a seat. Then we have Trinu Varblin, international business developer at Technology Center. Please, Mirinova. But also Energy Vaza cluster. And Ola, yeah, please, Ola Sweden, CEO of Mobile Heights and chairman of the board, Clusters of Sweden. What a nice panel we have here. Also, we have one virtual participation from, I think we have it from Poland. Anna Kwasnik, project, and I think I just got the message that she will be changed by the Piotr Maxis. I think he's here with us, Director Cluster of Hydrogen Technologies from Poland. So good. This virtual chair is for him, but he sees us here. Yes, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Perfect. Hello. Okay, so yeah, on one hand, we already understood clearly that the clusters are a vehicle designed for the impact. It was not designed just for the fun, yes? SMEs, businesses, they united the forces for the impact, naturally, yeah? But on this way, on this journey for the competitiveness, this vehicle meets some obstacles, some challenges. Maybe it was not designed perfectly, or it was designed some time ago. So this car, this vehicle, driving through the challenges has to evolve. And definitely the goal is the impact. But situations, circumstances, barriers, they affect this, how good, how speedy, how fast, how efficient the vehicle is. And every time, even though the clusters are known for decades, but they evolve, they change, they look for the new practices, they look for the better impact to deliver, naturally. And sometimes the government, the European Commission at the European level, the national government, the regional government also supports this one way or another. To change the tires, to metaphorically speaking, to involve new practices, driving practices, other things. So definitely this cluster as a vehicle evolves continuously. And we are here to discuss some practicalities, some use cases of the clusters, because in the panel we have not only the policymakers, but also cluster managers that share some thoughts about, how do they drive their car, the vehicle for the impact? What are the specifics in the clusters that they represent? How do they see the drive, the way to the impact. How do we increase this impact even more than it was initially expected? So we have some cluster managers that have one slide or two. So let's start the round table, or round chairs discussion a bit with the first intro of the cluster managers that are here. You can tell something about yourself and also your views on how this vehicle cluster evolution is happening. Is there any obstacles you see? Is there any challenges where it could require some support from the government as well? I start here. Trino, maybe, yeah. We'll switch on the slides, I think. One or two. Yeah, we have it. So I give the word to you. You have the slides could be changed with this magical machine with two buttons, I guess. So yes, yeah, you can start talking about the cluster, and the slides should appear soon. Pum pum.
Okay. My name is Triinu Varblane. I'm working as an international business developer at Technology Center Merinova. And also I represent the largest energy cluster in the Nordics called Energy Vaasa. Yeah, in our cluster we have more than 160 energy and energy-related companies. Our yearly turnover is about 5 billion euro, and more than 80% of our business export, or more than 80% of their outcomes is export. So I don't see at the moment the presentation, but anyhow, our history goes back to 18th century, and we are very happy and glad to have our very first gold label. This is the first cluster in Finland to receive this label, and the 4th energy cluster in the Nordics, and the 7th in whole Europe. And yeah, I think we should keep our time schedule, so we go further for the... Oh, you made it. Yes. So yeah, maybe we can go further. The key facts. Oh, very important map where we are placed, and I also pointed out Vilnius and Lithuania because of a very good collaboration together with Sweden and Germany regarding cluster manager education. And yes, again, our key facts. And we have 6 universities included in our cluster because we need knowledge and good know-how, and also a good research for our companies. Yeah, that's all.
Talking about the impact, maybe more details on how do you measure it? I mean, what do you see in terms of your operations? You are running operations for a while. I have heard the rumors that you are ranked or labeled gold. Super nice, congratulations. Any views that you have towards the impact? How do you assess it? How do you measure? What are the new things that you see for the impact? Maybe new elements that you never expected before, or something like that.
How do we do it? We have a very good daily and weekly and monthly communication with our companies. Otherwise, we won't exist. That's a very easy way to measure. Is your work valuable? Is it relevant or not? And we have to listen to our companies. Actually, we do what our companies ask us to do. My colleague used to call it modern slavery, but a very good slavery. Yeah.
Let's learn to each other, and let's get acquainted with all the other participants. So I move by the order, maybe from, I start with Piotr, which is online. I hope he can see us, not to lose him. So I'll double check, Piotr.
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Hey, welcome, welcome. Please, can you shortly present yourself? What is your cluster? What do you do? And maybe your expectations, but also actual happenings towards the economical development that you see among your cluster members.
So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me for the event. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there personally, but maybe next time, I hope. And also a bit of a mix-up, but I finally made it to be with you online. So just let me introduce myself. I'm the Managing Director of Cluster of Hydrogen Technologies. And actually we were the first hydrogen cluster in Poland, set up in 2016. And in that time, nobody really believed in hydrogen technologies. So we just wanted to, okay, the slides are changing slowly. And in that time, nobody really believed in hydrogen technologies. And in this year, everybody actually believes in hydrogen. So there's really no alternative. And especially now in these days of war and Poland being really close to Ukraine and being fully dependent, actually, maybe not fully, but strongly dependent on Russian fuels and gas. Now it's time to make a change. It's going to be, it has to be done much quicker than we actually first thought. And as a cluster, we signed agreements with European Investment Bank, and it helps our companies to invest in hydrogen technologies to build, for example, electrolyzer factories, and our local governments can also use this instrument to finance investments and development for decarbonized transportation systems.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. We will come back to you with some more questions. Then we continue with the introductory short presentations and maybe views on the economical development happenings, maybe the current challenges that the cluster faces now. So I turn to Christina from LITEC, from cluster from Lithuania. I'll turn to the slides also.
Yes, thank you, Mantas. So I hope the slides will be turned on soon. So. Hi everyone, I'm Kristina Nanicini and I'm the cluster manager of Laser and Engineering Technologies cluster. And the Laser and Engineering Technologies cluster LITEC and overall the laser industry in study 2021 on clustering processes in Lithuania was mentioned as an example of how clustering can help integrate into international R&D value chains and bring the economic value to the region. I think you all know that continuous investment to research and R&D is the essential key for continuous business growth and development, especially in the global market. On the other hand, clusters as tool, they implement the increased activities in innovation activities, such as digitalization, eco-innovation, and etc., and acts as a fast flow information provider, resulting to a collaboration between different companies and involvement in research. Regarding the history from my cluster side, LITEC was developed pretty much naturally due to several reasons. First of all, it was a very close collaboration between business and science from the very first day, the close geographical location, and also the general desire to create a world-class innovations in the field of photonics. Today, a wide range of LITEC member activities, everything from a simple optical glass, a component, to a top-notch femtosecond laser, precise laser micromachining units, creates a comprehensive R&D and manufacturing value chain. And this wasn't built in a day. You see, companies in LITEC invest around 5 to 10% on their revenue to the R&D activities, which, according to the Department of Statistics, is significantly higher than the average company in Lithuania, which, according to the 2020 statistics, was only around 1.2% of GDP. So creating R&D value also increases the efficiency of the business by creating products and services with the highest added value, which, according to the statistics that we gather, is almost double the national average our companies make. Furthermore, the collaboration between companies and research institutes also increases the collaboration not only in the R&D department, but also it increases the demand for other services to be upscaled. For example, 3D printing, precise mechanics, electronics, and much more others. So clustering and innovative photonics companies also help grow other adjacent sectors. For international collaboration and visibility, it is very hard for a small entity to enter into global value chain, I think we all know. But meanwhile, clusters allows us, through creating added value chain, also allows us to gain more visibility and international recognition. And for example, by using LITEC clusters infrastructure and created R&D value chain, companies from Lithuania enabled to get 2 tenders for about 10 million euros in order to develop world-class laser technologies here in Lithuania. Over the 8 years, laser companies managed to attract additionally more than 30 million euros for the development of laser technologies here in Lithuania. So by using the LITEC, not only the LITEC infrastructure, but by using the created added value chain, it enabled not only to create new knowledge successfully commercialized, but also it enabled to create new high added value jobs and also new businesses. Furthermore, by creating this added value, by creating this added value chain, also LITEC managed to integrate into international value chains, like we are a part of the largest photonic digital innovation hub in Europe. By doing this, it allowed us not also to increase the visibility of our laser companies internationally, but also it opened wider doors for other industries in Lithuania, like medicine, life science, agri-food, and other, to reach out the latest photonics-related news and implement those technologies into their daily activities and digitalize their business. So what being able to integrate into international value chains and being noticeable internationally means, it sums up to the numbers. The laser industry in Lithuania shows around 2 times the growth each 4 to 5 years period, while keeping their more than 90% of export, which I think are quite amazing numbers. And for the discussion, when I was preparing, even though this summer is a few days ago, will be in a few days, I would say, but still somehow clustering reminds me of snowball. Because a small snowflake is a nice phenomenon to look at, yes, but if you want to make an impact, you need to have some sort of more environmentally stronger structure, like a snowball. And the bigger and the stronger the snowball is, the more resilient to the environment it gets. And if you give the snowball the right push, it can become an indestructible force. And I think the same is with clusters. If you give the right push, it can become an amazing force, an amazing tool for bringing the economic value and life support to the region.
Thank you for a really nice metaphorical example of, yeah, and to finish the presentation, we turn to Ola, Sweden. Yeah, please, any word about the Swedish clusters, specifics?
Yes. So, thank you, and thank you for inviting me. It's so great to be here and meet you all in person as well. I was not able to attend in person the last meeting, so this is really great. My name is Ola Svedin. I'm the CEO of Mobile Heights, but I'm also the chairman of the board for Clusters of Sweden, which is the Swedish Cluster Association, and I will speak a little bit in that capacity today. So Clusters of Sweden was formed a little bit more than a year ago, because we saw the need for more, in fact, European collaboration was one of the main goals with forming Clusters of Sweden. We thought that we needed a national voice for the cluster system in Europe on behalf of Sweden. When I started thinking about how should we talk today about the disruption of the value chains that we see today, we picked up this interesting ECCP report. If you haven't read it, I can recommend it, and I think it's a good example on how you can structure this question. How can we help? How can clusters help? Yes, intelligence, of course, mapping regional assets and identify challenges. That's a very important part of it. One example of that, I think, is, for instance, the revitalization of the semiconductor industry that we need to see in Europe now with the EU Chips Act. Second point, fostering innovation and creating networks to enhance knowledge. I think it works on different levels. So, of course, within the value chain, again, taking the example of semiconductors, this will be very important with pan-European clusters working together in this value chain. Mobile Heights, we are, for instance, members of the Silicon Europe Alliance, which will be one of the projects that will be strengthened and driven forward by the Euroclusters program that was mentioned earlier here today. Also, networks should work cross-sectoral between value chains. And that is a very important role for clusters, I think, to take in this. And not the least cross-regional. And with cross-regional, yes, of course, on national level, but also across borders, I think we can play an even bigger role there than we have in the past. The third point, providing business support services. Yes, I mean, that's a very tangible part of a cluster organization, what we do. Granting access to infrastructure, that could be testbed, it could be digitalization services and skills development. Yes, so some examples just from my home region in the south of Sweden, how we do this and how what we already had started doing is becoming more important in light of the latest disruptions we have seen from COVID-19 and of course from the terrible war in Ukraine. We have already talked about digital innovation hubs. We have something called DigitHub. That is the regional innovation hub in South Sweden. And our focus is smart sustainable cities and smart industry. And of course, these are two sectors that are very much impacted by the current situation. Practical examples of what we do in the hub is skills and training, yes, very important to learn. We provide test opportunities, test before invest, etc. Networking, very important also to bring the knowledge of digitalization, of ICT to other sectors. That has also been mentioned several times already, the importance of this. One other example of what we do within the skills sector is with the support from the ESF on the EU level. We are part of a big skills upgrade program in the south of Sweden. So that's another good example of how the EU can foster and drive the upskilling needed for the next phase for Europe. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, so many examples to touch upon. I mean, now we're facing so many different challenges in terms of supply chains, and every cluster is kind of coping with this one way or another. And definitely there are patterns that are all over the clusters, and definitely there are some common actions to foresee at the European, regional, national level to support this change, transition, evolution, and so on. And then I turn probably to Mr. Jakub Borotynsky to elaborate maybe a bit more on the presentation. I love the presentation with so many actions. I mean, every cluster that faces one challenge or another can find himself in the action. I mean, down to earth, from simple firefighting to strategic. And I do remember having the discussion because at Innovation Center we also do support the clusters, work on them, with them on strategic sessions on their evolution, challenges, and so on. And every time we say that, guys, you should think outside the box a bit. You have to be part of the European cluster ecosystem. And every time, I get simple questions. We have, our own roadmap for the cluster, but there are very well mentioned the European, roadmaps built, transition pathways built, and you was referring that some of them, they were in some specific domains that they are already elaborated transition pathways. Some others they are on the development mode. Maybe can you elaborate a bit on that? And what is the mean for the cluster manager to kind of take advantage of this to foresee for the cluster evolution the pathways that are currently built in Europe, maybe even to actively participate in some, pathways elaboration process? Is there any means, maybe, something on this topic? Yeah, please.
I will share my. I hope it works. I'm not sure. Does it work?
It's
No.
supposed to be on. 1, 2, 3.
Now it works. Excellent. Thanks a lot. I mean, it was super interesting for me. I must say, I really want to listen as much as I can because it's a rare occasion to get outside of Brussels, to be in a more, let's say, stimulating non-online environment. And I'm quite new in the job, so I definitely want to hear also perhaps what's missing. What do you want us to, I don't know, to do perhaps a bit differently? This is in a way, let's say, something I want to learn. I mean, what works, what could work even better. Now, on what I have heard, for me, it's always, quite fascinating to see, that what you work on is kind of linking up with, some of the big things that for Europe. I mean, of course, both our partner from Poland and you are working on energy. I must say my first job in the Commission 15 years ago was about energy actually, and I was working, can you imagine, on energy partnership and relations with Russia. As we all know, it ended up very badly. We already seen the signs. But what we are experiencing now is that it is also what Lithuanian minister was saying. We are still short of alien invasion. This is very, very challenging, but this is also an amazing opportunity. I mean, for really doing things much faster than was ever before. We are hopefully finally in the let's say cusp of hydrogen revolution. We have a hydrogen alliance, which again, the whole idea of how we move ahead in Europe is not just about big companies, the giants, but it's about actually linking up, everyone, the academia, research, SMEs. This is in a way the European way, and we think that clusters can really play a major importance in this process. We don't know yet, of course, how this is all going to end up. We have to bet on different horses, but at the end, it's important we work together. Now, the second reflection that I had listening to you is that I think within the clusters you are also able, given the diversity, to somehow use and kind of use and combine different threads of what is, let's say, the maze of Commission programs and Commission policies. I mean, you mentioned Digital Innovation Hub, which is my previous, let's say, I was working before for 8 years in DG Connect, so I was quite familiar with that work. And we, of course, coordinate things at European level, but it's a very complex exercise, and ultimately, you actually see from your perspective how you can combine these different bits of pieces of European puzzle, being it funding, being it programs, being it policy initiatives. So, again, for us, I think it's also an important way for making sure that all those different strands end up in activities that produce real change on the ground. That it means more investment opportunities for the companies, etc. And maybe last point about transition pathways, it's a gigantic task. It's about skills, it's about investment, it's about regulatory barriers and few other things, strategic dependencies. we have to be realistic. We will not be able probably to deliver 100% on everything, but again, my encouragement from you is just to pick up what works for you, and go with it, in whether you use the momentum of transition pathways to have some major upskilling initiative, whether it's about, pulling up investments, maybe in some areas, we will have in the future more alliances, more maybe important project of common European interest. All of this can actually be somehow channeled and supported through the vision that transition pathways are about. And again, we do expect indeed clusters playing an active role in that. So that's 3 cents from me.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, really inspiring and important elements to keep in mind, and for every cluster manager to put into the agenda, to not only be spectator, but also the active player in this. And then I turn naturally to some of the horizontal things that I have heard through the discussions, for sure, that there are underlying or horizontal challenges that every cluster is facing. On one hand, there are a number of things that we cannot change, happenings around war and other things, but there are definitely things that we can change. And the first thing that I would like to explore, maybe turning to Christina a bit, the horizontal challenge or an opportunity, I guess, once again about thinking about the economical development impact and so on, is going beyond the Europe or thinking more globally. I mean, European clusters, super to have them, but again, they are teaming up. They are thinking about the new markets and having in mind these disruptions that we have. Do you see some patterns, some happenings broader than the Europe? I don't know, in terms of possible suppliers, some cluster or company-to-company collaborations, or maybe even cluster-to-cluster collaboration. Any things that happens in international agenda that maybe is important for the clusters that you know of or you're part of internationally? Christina, maybe, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for the question. I think it's quite a very hard question because, well, as a representative of the agri-food ecosystem, I can say that nowadays agri-food has become national security question. So we are not talking about very, very broad expansion to the world. Now we are talking about securing our own single market with the food security, actually. And Ukraine being called as a food basket of the world, which is very true. And now we see the sad consequences of the war. So now, first of all, we need to rebuild and make our agri-food value chains resilient and make sure that they won't be broken. During COVID times, we saw that we had really big problems in short food supply chains. They were broken, and then in many cases, food even was being lost. So now I think it's a huge opportunity to turn to innovation, to the digitalization, and to the Green Deal goals, even though we are hearing that maybe some of the goals should be postponed. But still, I think on the other hand, it is very important that we continue, because only innovative ecosystems working together can make our value chains resistant, and of course can sustain and ensure our security for the food. So this is very important from my thought.
Definitely. I hear you well. I mean, even though it's a challenging task, even though it's like plenty of things related to the national interest and so on, but nevertheless, what we clearly see, being a brokers, helping companies to connect, find alternative supply chains and so on, we found out that sometimes it's impossible to find the alternatives in Europe for some strategic ingredients, being it agri-food, being it the semiconductors and so on. And then it's, again, same as clusters have been designed for the impact, same, they naturally go international. Think about the supply chains naturally, because the cluster members, companies face this tremendously. Yeah, let's maybe start the circle again. I don't know, maybe from Finland, from your cluster operations, what international elements you see, maybe some specific support measures are missing, as it was clearly mentioned by by Jakub on, maybe something is missing to support even higher level of internationalization of the clusters. Even though the measures exist, there are some initiatives and so on, but what is the situation with internationalization going beyond the Europe in Finland? Please.
Regarding our cluster and our cluster members, we are working very internationally. We have 160 energy-related companies, and at the moment, because of the energy market crisis and all what's going on, with our neighbor countries and Asia, we need our networks more than ever. We can't just rely on cluster networks. We also need our networks from the businesses, and when we combine them together, because now we are actually making, or we are working with many new ways that we have never done it before, and it's a bad situation, but also very good situation for our cluster. And regarding what we need support. We need financial support. We need also good collaboration. Not only have a nice speeches, nice talks, real actions. And I'm really glad that you have done or organized this event today together with ECCP, because we need more that kind of actions. And the more we collaborate, the need of united thinking have ever been more important than today.
Good word, amen, as some say. Yeah? Really, really important elements. And probably let's continue with this framework of the discussion. You know, what is missing in the policy mix, maybe, what is missing from the initiatives, being it national, regional, being it European. I mean, yeah, and maybe these new initiatives would bring even more impact from the clusters. Maybe I turn to our virtual participant, Piotr, maybe your view on that. And then I come back to the one audience question.
Yes, hello, thank you so much. I totally agree with what was said before, but our cluster is now taking part in internationalization process. We are part of H2 Global project, when our companies and other companies from European Union will also take part in missions in, for example, Japan or Chile. And all these companies are working on hydrogen technologies. So we want to strengthen our, and we want to cooperate further than in the European Union. It is essential for our companies in these days to have a very broad mind, very open approach towards cooperation. It has been the last 2 years been very, very difficult for technological companies, and now what's happening due to war, it's even worse. So we have to help our companies to establishing new relations. And in the same time, I want to also highlight that our cluster was funded by our companies. So they basically are paying for our work. We have no public funding, and it is a challenge, honestly speaking. So what we are looking at is we would definitely be able to do more, but in Poland, in the regions in Poland, from my point of view, clusters need more support, and they have to be clearly seen by, for example, regional authorities. I think that regional authorities are the best to support our clusters. They know exactly what challenges we are facing, and they also can benefit from clusters and the regional development of companies being a part of the cluster. So from my point of view, basically that would be it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll take the microphone and we'll pick one question from the audience just to make it more dynamic, please.
Thank you, Mantas. I have some detailed and operational question because I'm Sebastian Rękiewicz from Metal Processing Cluster from Poland. We've got a close relation with our partners Lithuania since 12 years, but in fact, last 7 years we can operate only on the Brussels level because money from cross-border cooperation, which in fact initiate our cooperation, was not ready for us in details. That is enough. And at the moment, 1 week ago, Antonio initiated a meeting with clusters. We are during the war, during the problems. We met with Polish Association, say hello from Krzysztof Krzysztofski, this Friday to follow up this meeting. Tomorrow we have meetings with our partners from Ukraine on the B2B level, not C2C, because we have previous relation with clusters. And I'm really interested that we are ready on the cross-border, on the European level, to give the, like Trinu said, not only talks and nice say hello, that really tools to make improvement to our Ukrainian partners with the rapid and strong help for them. We are ready for flexible with our law solution because we manage our cooperation with Lithuania since 12 years. And if will be some problems, like during the COVID time, from all I have some inspiration during the Antonio conference, but COVID was not so strong and rapid like now. We stay at home, but few millions of Ukrainians have must removed, and in fact, probably tomorrow our business partners will be try to relocate their business, and we've got tools or not at the moment.
Thank you so much for the remark, and some reactions. Continuing the discussion on, what practical steps we can make further on, thinking about the practical steps and actual impact. As it was correctly mentioned by the Polish colleague, saying that yes, clusters can deliver more impact, and this, this catalytic effect that sometimes the government can play is important to have, because without this, the vehicle doesn't run that fast as it could. So thinking about the other missing elements in the puzzle, I continue, we still have some 5 or so minutes, I continue with Christina, who was mentioning a lot about the internationalization, about their really remarkable story on how they grow internationally, beyond the borders, beyond the Europe and so on. Is there anything missing, or is there any catalytic effect that you can think of that would help you to generate even more growth and impact to the economy?
I think from the catalytic effect, a really nice graph was shown, I think, by Richard, that only 1% of SMEs in Lithuania are involved in clustering activities. And I think it shows a lot, especially when we say that in Lithuania we have around, 50, 60 clusters. So, but only 1% of the overall SMEs only are involved in the clustering activities. So we already have some success stories from the clusters, from the Lithuania, whether it's agri-food, whether it's automotive or other industries. So if only 1% of SMEs can achieve this kind of goals, the impact into the national economy, imagine what kind of impact could be done if we could involve more SMEs into creation of the national value, national or international value chains. So what I'm hearing, and today, and overall my experience, 5 years in clustering activities, from the Commission level, there are a lot of initiatives, like today was mentioned. You just have to pick up whatever your industry is, whatever you are looking for, whether it's collaboration, whether it's knowledge implementation or another. But I think the catalytic effect that might upscale the regional economy and impact by the clusters should be, I think, more focused also for the local development towards the clustering activities. Like my metaphor was, the bigger and the stronger the snowball is, the more it's resistible to the environment. So I think the government should be more aware of not only how they can maybe support clustering, but also what are they expect from clusters, because with the power comes the greatest possibility. So if clusters are asking for funding, they also should be getting some expectations, what kind of national authorities would like to achieve for them and bring that economic value or life, a better life for society. So.
Thank you, Christina. Very good remark. Thank you for returning the ball to the national policymakers as well. We are not talking about the European level here. Yes, yes, indeed. I mean, correctly mentioned, cluster support facility, other things that happens nationally, they contribute, they underpin, underconnect other initiatives, European ones and so on, and kind of digest and clearly prepares all the possibilities, financial, networking, and other things for the local clusters to be used and to be, explored. So definitely the role of the national policy initiatives clearly there. I mean, we're supposed to have some vice ministers joining us due to some time constraints. They are not there, but I know that they're watching us over the Zoom. So they hear this well. I mean, definitely we need their role. We are not relying only on European level support. So I turn to this dilemma, national versus European. Both are there, needed for sure. Is there anything particularly, now you honestly can say what is missing in your country and policy-wise and also European-wise, so please, Olo.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to note this piece of statistic that actually SMEs in Sweden are the most involved in clusters, which tells me it's a blunt measure. And what I mean by that is that it's very good, of course, that we are so organized. But my view, it's very much on local and regional level, and I think there is a big opportunity actually to connect these regional and local clusters on national level, but most importantly, I think on European level. So that is actually what I see, what I need help with, so to speak. What do I want? I want the help from the Commission, of course, to engage in talks also with the Swedish government on these issues. And also to make sure that the Swedish government is as involved as it seems that some of the other countries here represented today are. So statistics can tell you a lot, but they don't tell the full story, I think. So we still have a lot to do when it comes to organizing SMEs in the best way, also in Sweden.
Okay. Thank you. Really relevant to every country, I guess, situations and scenarios, how to support and how to get more of the impact and more of the growth from the clusters, for sure. We have 2 minutes to close down the session. So any concluding remarks? Anyone that would like to mention some of the impact-oriented questions, or maybe to wrap up some of the elements that were related, missing instruments, missing initiatives that could be emphasized here? I don't know, Piotr, maybe virtually you are also could maybe add some final statement on further evolution of the policies, maybe. Again, the balance between national initiatives that definitely needed and also European one from the Polish perspective. Some words on that?
Yeah, definitely Poland is facing lots of challenges, and we are also waiting for the National Resilience Plan to be accepted, and that's a huge question mark. We know it's going to happen, hopefully, but we don't know when. And we know that it's in this huge funding support is also a help for clusters and innovative companies, especially in the sector we are working in the carbonization and hydrogen technologies. And when everything starts, and when all the renewable sources will be installed, and it's going to need a huge support, and it's going to be a new economic start for Poland. But now at the moment we are facing financial challenges. Our companies are having shortages in supplies. There's a huge a gap in human resources capital at the moment. So something good has to happen, and it has to happen now. We can't wait actually any longer. It might look different in the news, but when you talk to the industry, it's not bad, but the companies and clusters are actually struggling. So something good has to happen immediately.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. With this message clearly heard that, yeah, we need to act now. We're not here just to discuss. We are here to make the partnerships, to use the measures that we have nationally or internationally, and to act on this opportunity and sometimes to overcome this great challenges that we have in front of us. So with this note, I would like to thank you panelists being here, sharing their thoughts, sharing the ideas, sharing some, inspiring stories, how they do overcome some challenges and how they do contribute to the impact, economical impact. It's not only a nice slogans that we see here, but also we see actual happenings. Clusters contribute clearly to overcoming the challenges that the particular companies are facing, also taking the best of their companies' strategic challenges to the policy domain. So that's again a really important message that we have here. And we continue on this message and we continue on this day to discovering even more practicalities, even more intervention areas, even more practices on how the clusters could drive the change. Not to drive the change only, but to help in managing the challenges that we have here in Europe and beyond. On this bombshell, I thank you so much. We break for the lunch. We come back in approximately 1 hour. We come back in, 2 o'clock, I think. So we have 3 o'clock local time. Yes, that's the magic about the local and not local. So yes, please, local time, 3 o'clock, we come back. We break for lunch. Thank you so much.